You're glued to your phone, constantly refreshing, every 2 minutes, waiting for that text that never seems to arrive. Your heart races when someone takes too long to reply. You interpret every silence as rejection, every delay as abandonment, every bit of distance as proof that you're just not enough. And the worst part, you know it's irrational. You know the other person is probably just busy. You know you don't need constant validation. But fear, it just doesn't listen to reason. Fear lives somewhere deeper, somewhere that was wounded long before you even learned to talk. Today, I'm going to show you where that terror of being abandoned really comes from. It's not weakness. It's not insecurity without a cause. It's a real wound. A wound that your parents may have created, and that Carl Jung spent his entire life studying. What you're about to discover in the next few minutes will change how you see all of your relationships. Because the fear you feel today isn't really about the present. It's about reliving something that happened a long, long time ago. Something the child inside of you has never gotten over. Let me tell you about a woman named Emily. Emily was 34 when she started therapy. She was successful at work, intelligent, beautiful, but her relationships always ended the same way. She would suffocate her partners, text them way too much, need constant reassurance that she was still loved, and when she didn't get that reassurance fast enough, she'd panic. Her ex-boyfriends all said the same thing. "You're too needy. You don't let me breathe. You need more than I can give." And Emily just didn't understand, because internally she felt like she was asking for the bare minimum. She just wanted to know she was loved. She just wanted to be sure she wouldn't be left. Was that really too much to ask? Her therapist asked her a simple question. "Emily, when was the first time you felt afraid of being abandoned?" And suddenly, something shifted in her face. A memory that had been buried for decades rose to the surface. She was 5 years old. Her mom left for work, like she did every day. But that specific day, Emily had a strange feeling. An irrational certainty that her mom wouldn't come back. She spent the entire day at the window, waiting, crying, praying for her mom to return. The babysitter tried to calm her down, said that her mom always came back. But Emily just couldn't believe it. The fear was bigger than any logic. And when her mom finally arrived at 6 in the evening, like she always did, Emily ran to hug her, sobbing. And you know what her mom said? "Stop being so dramatic, Emily. I always come back. You're being ridiculous." That phrase, that single phrase, planted a seed that would grow for 29 years. Because what Emily learned in that moment wasn't that her mom always came back. What she learned was that her fear was wrong, that her feelings were ridiculous, that asking for reassurance was drama. And from that day on, Emily did what every child does when their feelings are invalidated. She hid the fear, buried the need, pretended she didn't need anyone. But fear doesn't just disappear because you bury it. It just changes shape. It transforms into something that Jung called the shadow self. The shadow self is everything we reject within ourselves, everything we've learned to hide because it wasn't accepted. And the more we hide, the more power the shadow self gains. Emily's fear of abandonment was pushed into the shadow self at 5 years old. And there, it grew. It fed on every moment she wasn't seen, every time her needs were ignored, every bit of validation that never came. And when Emily grew up and started having relationships, this fear came out of the shadow self with full force. Not as conscious fear, but as behavior, as neediness. Like that inner voice that screamed, "You're going to be abandoned." Every time someone took too long to respond to a text. Jung explained this brilliantly. He said, "What we do not make conscious manifests in our lives as destiny." Emily wasn't conscious of her abandonment wound. So she attracted partners who activated that wound. She created situations that confirmed her deepest fear. She transformed every relationship into a repetition of that day at 5 years old when she was waiting at the window. This is what Jung called repetition compulsion. The human psyche tries to heal old wounds by recreating the situations that caused them. It's as if a part of you is still trying to make that day right, still trying to receive the comfort you didn't receive, still hoping that this time someone will say, "Your feelings are valid, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere." But here's the problem. When you repeat the pattern unconsciously, you usually attract people who will react exactly like your parents reacted. People who will invalidate your fear. People who will say you're too much. People who will leave, confirming the original belief. You're not too needy. You're not too dramatic. You're not too hard to love. You're a wounded child in an adult body, trying to heal a pain that no one ever validated. Now, let me explain how narcissistic parents create this abandonment wound, because it wasn't just one moment. It wasn't just one phrase. It was a systematic pattern that programmed your nervous system to expect rejection. Narcissistic parents are emotionally unpredictable. One moment they love you, the next moment they ignore you. You never know which version of your mom or dad is going to appear when they come home. This unpredictability is devastating for a child because children need consistency to develop internal security. They need to know that love will be there tomorrow the same way it is today. But children of narcissists never have that certainty. Their love is conditional, based on dad's mood, on mom's moment, on the child's performance. And what does that teach the child? It teaches them that love is unstable, that loved ones can disappear at any moment, that you need to be always vigilant because rejection can come without warning. Jung spoke extensively about what he called the maternal complex and the paternal complex. A complex is an emotionally charged nucleus that is formed in childhood and continues operating in the unconscious for the rest of your life. When you have an abandonment complex, you're not simply afraid of losing one person. You're reliving every time you were abandoned emotionally, each time your fear is triggered in the present. All the pain of the past comes along with it. That's why your reactions seem so disproportionate. You're not just reacting to that unanswered text. You're reacting to 20 years of emotional neglect, compressed into a single moment. Take a breath, because the most important part is coming up now. There's something no one tells you about the fear of abandonment. Most people think that fear comes from being left physically, from someone walking away, from being dumped, but the truth is much more subtle and much more cruel. The most devastating abandonment isn't physical, it's emotional. It's being in the same room as your parents and still feeling completely alone. This is what psychologists call emotional neglect, and it's one of the hardest forms of trauma to identify because it doesn't leave visible scars. Your parents might have been physically present every day. They might have given you food, clothing, and shelter. They might have never hit you or yelled at you. But if they weren't emotionally available, if they didn't validate your feelings, if they didn't really see you, you were abandoned. And that invisible abandonment creates an invisible wound, a wound you might not even know you have. A wound that makes you feel like something is wrong with you, but you can't explain what it is. Many people spend their entire lives thinking they're problematic, that they're too sensitive, that they want too much, when in reality, they're normal people with normal needs that were never met in childhood. The problem isn't you. The problem is what was done to you. Now, I need to tell you about another case. A man named Richard. Richard had the opposite problem from Emily. While Emily clung to people, Richard ran from them. When a relationship started to get serious, Richard felt an irresistible urge to leave. He'd sabotage. He'd create fights. He'd find flaws that didn't exist. Anything to avoid having to stay. His girlfriends thought he was cold, that he didn't know how to love, that he was afraid of commitment. But Jung would explain it differently. Richard was so afraid of being abandoned that he abandoned first. This is a classic psychological defense. If I leave before you leave me, I control the situation. If I never truly attach, the loss won't hurt as much. Richard wasn't running from love. He was running from the pain he knew would come when the love ended. Because in his unconscious mind, all love ends in abandonment. There are no exceptions. It's just a matter of time. And where did this belief come from? From a father who promised to be present and never was. From a mother who said, "I love you," but her actions said otherwise. From years of learning that the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you the most. Richard developed what Jung called a defensive persona, a mask of independence, an armor of "I don't need anyone." But beneath the mask, there was the same wounded child that Emily carried, the same need for love, the same fear of loss, the same pain of never having been enough. The difference is, Emily expressed the wound by seeking love desperately, and Richard expressed the same wound by rejecting love before it could reject him. Two opposite strategies, the same pain. If you've watched this far, tell me in the comments. Do you identify more with Emily or with Richard? Do you cling or do you run? Do you ask for too much or do you ask for nothing because you've learned it's pointless? There's a third category that Jung identified. People who alternate between the two extremes. One moment, they cling desperately. The next moment, they push the person away. They create a cycle of push and pull that leaves partners confused and exhausted. This happens because the wound of abandonment has created two parts within the same person. One part that desperately wants love and connection, and another part that has learned that love means pain. These two parts are constantly at war, and everyone around them suffers the consequences. Jung would call this ego dissociation, an internal fragmentation caused by repeated trauma in childhood. The child needed to divide themselves to survive, and the adult remains divided until they do the work of integration. Now, let me show you the signs that you're projecting your parents onto your partner, because this happens so automatically that you don't even realize it. First sign, you react disproportionately to small things. Your partner takes half an hour to reply to a text, and you already imagine it's over. He cancels a date because he's sick, and you feel like you've been abandoned forever. She makes a neutral comment, and you interpret it as total rejection. If your reactions are consistently bigger than the situation warrants, it's because you're not reacting to the situation. You're reacting to the past. Second sign, you have trouble believing in positive affirmations. When someone says they love you, you can't simply accept it. You need proof. You need constant confirmation. You need to hear it again and again, because the words can't penetrate the armor of distrust you've built. This happens because the people who should have loved you unconditionally failed. And now you can't trust words of love because they were used against you. Third sign, you test the person to see if they'll leave. You create impossible situations. You make exaggerated demands. You start fights for no reason, all to see if the person can handle it, to see if they'll prove that they're different from your parents. But this test never ends, because no proof is enough to convince a wounded child that it's safe to trust. Fourth sign, you feel safer when you're in control. If you decide the pace of the relationship, you feel good. But if the other person makes decisions, you panic. Because control is the way you found to protect yourself from the unpredictable pain that came from your parents. If you control, you avoid surprises, and surprises mean pain. Did you recognize any of these signs in yourself? Don't judge yourself. These patterns aren't character flaws. They're adaptations you develop to survive an impossible childhood. The problem is they don't serve you anymore. What protected you in childhood now sabotages you in adulthood. Jung discovered something fascinating about how the fear of abandonment manifests in the body. It's not just a thought. It's a complete physical reaction. When you feel like you're going to be abandoned, your nervous system goes into survival mode. Your heart races, your hands sweat, your breathing becomes shallow. You might feel a tightness in your chest, a sense of panic that seems way out of proportion to the situation. This happens because the fear of abandonment activates the same areas of the brain that process physical pain. Scientific studies have shown that social rejection literally hurts. It's not a metaphor, it's neurology. And here's the cruel part. Your brain doesn't differentiate between real abandonment and imagined abandonment. When you imagine you're going to be left, your body reacts as if you already have been left. That's why you suffer before anything even happens. That's why you create abandonment scenarios in your head. That's why you're constantly on high alert even when everything is fine. Your nervous system has been trained to expect the worst. Narcissistic parents train their children for hypervigilance. You learn to read micro-expressions, to detect subtle shifts in mood, to anticipate explosions or rejections before they happen. This ability that you develop to survive in childhood becomes a curse in adulthood, because you keep reading signals that don't exist. Keep interpreting neutrality as rejection. Keep expecting the storm even on sunny days. Carl Jung called this projection. You project your expectations of abandonment onto people who have nothing to do with your parents. You see threats where there are none. You create what you fear most. And here's the terrible irony. The fear of abandonment often causes the abandonment you fear so much. When you smother someone with neediness, they pull away. When you constantly test someone's love, they get tired. When you create drama to get attention, you push away those who love you. And then you say to yourself, I knew it. I always knew they'd leave me. But you didn't know. You created it. You turned your fear into a self-fulfilling prophecy. This isn't your fault. You were operating from a program you didn't choose. A program that was installed when you were too vulnerable to resist. But now that you know, you can choose differently. Let me explain how the cycle of abandonment perpetuates through generations, because your parents probably didn't wake up one day and decide to hurt you. They were repeating what was done to them. Jung spoke about this as psychic inheritance, the idea that unresolved traumas pass from generation to generation, not through genes necessarily, but through patterns of behavior, through ways of relating, through what has never been healed. Your father was emotionally abandoned by his father. Your mother never received validation from her mother. And they passed on to you what they had, not out of malice, out of inability. You can't give what you haven't received. Understanding this isn't excusing. Understanding is beginning to heal. Because when you see your parents as wounded people instead of monsters, you gain power. You stop being a victim of their story and start writing your own. Now I need to tell you the hardest part to hear. You won't heal this wound by finding the right person. You won't heal it by receiving enough love from a partner. You won't heal it when someone finally proves to you that they won't leave, because the hole inside you is the exact size of the love you should have received from your parents. And no partner can fill what your parents left empty. This doesn't mean you're doomed. It means the healing needs to come from somewhere else. It needs to come from within. Jung developed a process he called individuation. It's the journey of integrating all parts of yourself, including the wounded child who's still waiting at the window, including the shadow self that carries all the rejected fear and pain, including the complexes that control your life without you realizing it. Individuation is making conscious what is unconscious. It's looking at the parts of yourself you've hidden and saying, I see you. It's giving yourself what your parents should have given you. That sounds abstract. So let me be concrete. The child inside you who's afraid of abandonment needs three things: needs to be seen, needs to be validated, needs to feel safe. When you were little, your parents should have provided that. They didn't. So now you need to provide it for yourself. Sounds weird, right? How can I give myself something I don't have? But that's exactly the journey of healing. You learn to be for yourself the father you never had, the mother you never had, the safe presence that can calm the terrified child inside you. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. Sometimes it's painful, often it's confusing, but it's possible. And when you start to heal, something extraordinary happens in your relationships. You stop asking other people to fill your void. You stop testing if they'll leave. You stop creating dramas to confirm your fears. You can simply be present, can love without desperation, can trust without constant vigilance. Not because you found the perfect person, but because you finally stopped carrying the open wound into every relationship. Now, I want to pause here. If you've made it to this point in the video, it's because something I said touched a real wound. You recognize something about yourself, about your childhood, about your relationships. This type of content isn't easy to create. It requires deep research on Jung and developmental psychology. It requires care to not oversimplify or overcomplicate. It requires courage to talk about things that most prefer to ignore. If this video helped you understand something you've been carrying for years, the super thanks button down below is a way to say thank you. It's not just financial support, it's you saying this content matters. This truth about childhood needs to be better known. More people need to understand where the pain they carry comes from. Every time you click that golden heart, you help me continue bringing this type of revelation, to unravel the patterns that hold us back, to translate Jung into language that really transforms lives. Thank you to everyone who has already supported me. You are part of this mission of healing. Now let me tell you how you can start healing today. Not tomorrow, today. The first step is recognizing the wound. You can't heal what you deny exists. So, if you watch this video and recognize yourself, the first step has already been taken. You know you have an abandonment wound. You know where it came from. That's already huge. The second step is separating the past from the present. When you feel that fear creeping in, ask yourself, is this about now? Or is it about before? Is this person in front of me my partner? Or is it my dad wearing a different face? Is this fear proportional to the situation? Or is it disproportionate because it's coming from somewhere else? Just asking that question creates space. It takes you out of autopilot. It allows you to choose how to react instead of just reacting. The third step is reparenting your inner child. When you feel that fear of abandonment, imagine the child you once were. Imagine her waiting at the window, scared that no one is ever coming back. And talk to her, say, I am here. I will not abandon you. Your feelings are valid. You are not too much. You are not hard to love. You deserve safety. It seems silly at first. It feels like you're acting. But something happens when you really do it. The child inside you starts to believe. The tension in your body starts to decrease. The fear starts to lose its power. Jung said that healing happens when you become aware of the unconscious parts of yourself. When you bring light to your shadow self, it stops controlling you. This doesn't mean the fear will disappear completely. Some wounds leave scars. Some programs are hard to rewrite, but it does mean that you don't have to be a slave to your past anymore. It means that you can have different relationships. You can love differently. You can stop repeating what was done to you. And that's all the child inside of you ever wanted. Not to be magically healed, but to be seen, to be heard, to be finally validated after so many years. I want to finish by telling you what happened with Emily. Remember her? The woman who suffocated her partners because she was afraid of being abandoned. After 2 years of therapy, Emily changed, not because she found the one, but because she finally faced that 5-year-old girl waiting at the window. She cried for entire sessions. She felt anger towards her parents who invalidated her feelings. She grieved the love she should have received and never did. And then, something shifted. The panic decreased. The desperate need loosened. She still wanted love. She still wanted a partner. But it wasn't a matter of survival anymore. She could be alone without falling apart. She could wait for a text without being glued to her phone, constantly refreshing. She could trust that even if someone left, she would survive because she wasn't that 5-year-old girl anymore. She was a woman who had learned to take care of herself. Emily still has difficult days. She still feels the fear sometimes. But now, she knows what's happening. She knows it's the past trying to control the present, and she knows that she can choose differently. That is individuation. That is healing. That is breaking the cycle that passed from generation to generation. You can do this too. It doesn't matter how many years you spent repeating the pattern. It doesn't matter how many relationships you sabotaged. It doesn't matter how deep the wound seems. The child inside you is waiting for you to finally come back to her, waiting for you to say what your parents should have said. I am here. I see you. You don't have to be afraid. I'm not going anywhere. Tell me in the comments, at what age did you first realize you were afraid of being abandoned? Was it a specific situation, a phrase someone said, a moment that stuck with you? Share your story. Because when one of us speaks up, others recognize themselves. And recognition is the first step to healing. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the lie you tell yourself about your childhood, the story you created to survive, that's now preventing you from healing. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. Remember, your fear is not weakness. Your need is not a flaw. You are a normal person with normal needs who grew up in abnormal circumstances. The wound is real, the pain is valid, and healing is possible. I see you. You are not alone, and the child inside you can finally rest.